I'm right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, entertainment, comedy, and so much more. Nick Durst here, along with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, very excited for our guest today. He checks off a lot of the boxes that our listeners and viewers are looking for.
Yes, he does. He's quite versatile. He's been on TV for a really long time. He's been a sports broadcaster for Fox Sports, ESPN. He's also a military man, former veteran of the Air Force. So we're very, very happy to have him on. We welcome Mike Hill to the show. Mike, before we started here, you said you were in Toronto. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you're not beating the cold over here like we are after the blizzard. But we're really happy to have you on with us. And what's up?
Hey, happy to be here, man. The things you do for love. Come up here in 10-degree temperatures to come visit your girlfriend who has to be here to shoot her show. But I'm looking forward to getting back to LA. I wish she was going back with me. But yeah, I'm going back tomorrow, so I'm gonna get back into those decent temperatures starting tomorrow.
Nothing
Happy to
like
be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
nothing
Appreciate
like
you.
Southern California in the winter.
Nothing that's what you pay for, pretty much. The high prices out there, we basically pay for a lot of sun when we go out and live in LA.
Oh, big difference from going when you were back in Bristol to
Ooh,
California.
can I tell you, I do not miss those days in Bristol when I had to come out 2, 3 o'clock in the morning after doing a late sports center and after an 8, 9 hour shift and then having to dig your car from under 2 feet of snow for an hour and a half just to drive home, which would take you 45 minutes, just to get home when it usually takes you 15 minutes to get home. So yeah, I don't miss those days at all.
Cannot blame you there. And everybody we've had on that's former ESPN says the same thing. So
Yeah,
can't
yeah, yeah.
can't fault you there. Obviously, when you're a broadcaster, typically you have, or especially when you're doing radio as well, like you have to be a great storyteller. So I'm curious, how did that translate into your stand-up comedy career? How did you get the courage to, do an open mic and get started there? And what's it like pulling your set together?
That's a great question. Thank you, man. It's funny because obviously I kind of got into stand up by accident in a sense. For years, most of my friends have been stand up comedians. Like half of my friends, my cousin is D.L. Hughley, and I've just been exposed to a lot of stand up comedy over the years. And I've been a big fan all my life. Ever since the days when I was a kid, when watching and speaking, and listening to Richard Pryor or early Eddie Murphy. So I've always been a big fan. And then, so I've always gone on these podcasts, which were comedy podcasts, and they wanted me to come on for sports, but then they discovered like, okay, well, he's kind of funny. He say, funny things here and there. You ever try stand up? And I never had the courage to do it. But then recently, about a couple of years ago, a lady named Hope Flood, who's on the Def Comedy Jam, she's a legend in the black comedy community. She said, "I hear you thought about doing stand up once or twice before." I said, "Never really." She said, "Well, why don't you come and host this show for me? And let me see how you do it. If you like it, get into it. You can tell a couple of jokes, just bring the comedians up and just do it that from there." And the bug hit me, man. So I started liking it and it became basically my therapy, man. So instead of having to pay $400 an hour to somebody to listen to my worries and my troubles, man, I just go up on stage and tell all my stories and get everything out from my girlfriend to my kids to my mom to anything that's kind of happening in my life, man. I just kind of use that stand-up stage as my outlet for my therapy.
Well, it was in the genes, in the blood, Joe, right?
That's right.
Comedy family. So
Mm.
love to see it, Mike, because a lot of
Yeah.
people don't have the courage to do that stuff. But like you said, therapeutic. You
Yeah.
got a
I
great
was gonna
story.
say we have a friend who we've been trying to push to just do like an open mic, even for 3 to 5 minutes, because that's usually how it is at the beginning. What advice would you have for somebody who's just kind of looking to kind of break the ice a little bit?
Just do it and get up there and just be yourself. Talk about yourself. Don't try and be a comedian. The same advice I get people that want to be a broadcaster. To be honest with you, just be you. Honestly, people want to hear your authentic self. You go up there and just kind of have a presence about you. Not don't take it too seriously, especially if you're in stand-up comedy. I know it's nerve-wracking. It's one of the most nerve-wracking things I still have to do. I've spoken in front of millions of people and been in front of stadiums. And what's crazy about it is I could be at a stadium or know that millions of people are watching me and I'm not nervous doing broadcasting, but I can be on a stage and if it's only 10 or 15 people in the audience, I'm about to crap my pants, man. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like it's just so nerve-wracking. But when you get up there, you just kind of just get loose and just be authentic and realize that, you know what, at the end of the day, nobody's dying. You know, I'm here to try and make these people laugh. And if you don't make them laugh today, you're gonna make them laugh tomorrow. So just get up there, man, just do it. So I tell your friend, man, just once again, 3 minutes set. Get up there, say something about your life. Usually, when you have those open mics early on, people are really supportive. They'll encourage you. Sometimes they'll give you tips along the way, and they'll let you know sooner or later if you got what it takes to continue. So just try it, and you never know what it's going to lead to. Like I said, I tried it just to do it for a hosting gig one time with Hope Flood, and I fell in love with it. And once again, I've done shows at the Hollywood Improv, the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory in LA. I've done all the big major markets. I've been on national television with my stand-up comedy in just less than 2 years. So I'm looking forward to the Netflix special that's coming down the road.
Ooh, all right. We'll keep an eye out for that. So obviously, sports, of course, entertainment, the comedy. I know you're also a big music fan. I'm curious, when you were younger, how big of a fan were you of the Sugar Hill Gang?
Because of the last name. I mean, look, I know that's where rap started or whatever, but yeah, I mean, I think the Sugar Hill Gang, all I can remember is just the one song that they made. So I get, what's crazy is then everybody started calling me Sugar Hill. That was my one of my first nicknames.
That's
And
good.
then I picked it up little bit later in life when I actually had a partner when I was doing ESPN radio with Mark Schlereth. Mark Schlereth used to call me Sugar Hill all the time. And so
Wow.
that name kind of caught on. So people today, they'll run into me if they remember me from the ESPN radio days, whatever, they'll call me Sugar Hill. So that kind of, even though that began in the early 80s, or late 70s, early 80s, or whatever, for me, once Sugar Hill game, the name Hill and Sugar just kind of stuck with me along the way. Yeah.
It's crazy how that happens. Something in pop culture, you got similar something with the name, it gets stuck to you moving forward. So I heard that was your nickname, so I wanted to
Yeah,
ask you there.
Sugar. Yeah.
Now you're so busy, Mike. You're working on so many projects at once. So I'm curious, each day, what's the first app you're checking on your phone?
Checking sure my girlfriend, well, since we don't live together, seeing if she's okay, first and
Text.
foremost. And I'm not just saying that because she's like 5 feet away from me, I love her to death. She's crazy, but she's my world, making sure she's fine. But first thing I look at, I go online like everybody else, see if the world is still here. First and foremost, with this crazy society right now, you never know. I want to make sure I'm not in the zombie apocalypse, waking up and making sure zombies aren't around me. But I'll, go through social media just first because I think that tells you everything you need to know about the world early on. Try and stay off Instagram the first thing, but I'll look at my emails and then I'll go on the sites depending on what I have to do that day. If I got to do Fox Sports that day, I'm going on all the sports sites, kind of doing my research, finding out what's going on in the world of sports, if anything's changed from the night before. And it just varies. Like you said, I do so many different things. So it could be waking up, going downstairs, going to the office, going to the lab, just working on some projects for my company behind the scenes, doing things with my girlfriend. When it comes to our companies, that we work on things together. It could be writing some stand up. It just varies throughout the day, depending on what I have coming up. I'm a very structured person. That's that military background that I have. So I usually have a schedule that I kind of like to try and follow. And if I'm not on that schedule, I'm really not going to do anything. And sometimes the time in the day gets away from me. So I like to kind of write things down. But this past week has just been kind of like a whirlwind of just having a good time, just being out here with her and watching her do her thing.
Military man, used to structure and routine and applying that into your everyday life. Joining the United States Air Force. So for some people, they come from a military background and a military family. For some people, they just have that itch and that urge to serve the country in that capacity. So what pushed you to join the United States Air Force?
Well, serve my country had nothing to do with it. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't gonna sit up and like, oh, I got to go to war. Oh my gosh, United States of America. What? Comments? No, it wasn't for me. I was like, man, I'm broke. And I ain't ready to go to school. I ain't ready to go to college or whatnot. I mean, I was a good student in high school. But I wanted to have something different for my life because where I grew up, I was born in New York, but I was raised in Alabama.
Hmm.
And the city and the town I was raised in, man, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for a lot of people like me, just anybody, to be honest with you. And I saw a lot of people who went off to college and they would come back after like a year and they would just be in a neighborhood, drop out of school and just kind of get some kind of local job or whatever and just, live the life there. And I didn't want that for myself. So luckily I had two cousins who had already gone into the military, and they were in the Air Force and they had brand new cars when they came back from basic training or whatnot. And I'm like, oh, I want a new car too. And I want money. And I want money that I can save up to go to college as well. So at that particular time, it was just the right thing for me to do. It was a necessary thing for me to do because I probably didn't have the discipline to go to college. I would have been just like everybody else from my neighborhood. So I went in. That's the reason I got in. I love to tell you the story that I saw, the world was in trouble and they needed me. No, you got to understand, this was back in 1980. We were at peace. There was nothing really going on in the world. We didn't really care about wars and all that. That stuff came later on after, the Desert Storm had was 5 years later or whatever. So there was really nothing going on. I just did it to get some college money. And I'm glad I did it because it was one of the best things that happened in my life because a lot of the military values that they gave me, I basically still instill today in my everyday life. I mean, I don't fold my drawers in 6-inch squares, anything like that. I don't put, hospital corners on my bed or anything. But at the same time, when it comes to being on time, being disciplined about certain things and being a good team player, I got all that from the military and I'm thankful for it.
It's like I said, structure, routine, discipline. For some people who work in sports media, they're up at wacky early hours of the day. When you're a military man, you're up at wacky early hours of the day. But
Yeah,
talk about
Mike,
trend.
I was
Go
sort of
ahead.
quick with with the military stuff, like Joe said, it gives you the different times and stuff. But in sports media, like what's the worst time shift to work? Is it the overnights? Is it the 6 a.m. shows when you're waking up at 2? What's the worst?
The worst is when I was at ESPN, it was the show that we called the close show. If
Mm,
we did the late sports center, the last sports center of the night that came on at 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast,
right.
that was the worst because a lot of times, especially on the weekends, if you had, say, you had a top 25 college football team like USC back in the day, and they were playing Hawaii, you're on the East Coast and Hawaii is 8 hours time different or whatever, and they're playing at night. So the game wouldn't end until like 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, and you had to wait until that game finished before you can actually finish your show because it was on a loop. So it was a live show, but then you know how they played
Right, the
the
replay.
last show of the night. They had the replay going into the morning, so you had to be there all night. Sometimes I wouldn't get out of there until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and
Oh,
I'd get home, and as soon as I once again dig my car up from 2 feet of snow and got home, I'd get in the bed and I'd see the sun rising. And I realized I had to go back to work the next day and do it all over again. So that was absolutely the worst shift to do in all the sports. But once again, none of them are bad. You can go back. You can go. Yeah. Yeah. None of them are bad. My girlfriend's okay. Go ahead. That's fine. Okay. All right. Yeah. None of them are bad. They're all a blessing. I enjoy doing each and every one of them.
So you pursued a career in sports media after transitioning away from the military life back into civilian life here. So is that something that you were interested in when you were younger, working in media, being associated with sports? And what was the avenue that kind of helped you, pursue that path?
Well, I sucked at sports. That's one of the reasons that I started talking about sports. I didn't suck. I just knew I wasn't good enough to be in the NBA or the NFL. But I said I wanted to kind of do something in sports. When I was in high school, it's a funny thing. There was an English teacher that hated me, couldn't stand me. Named Miss Harris, and Miss Harris taught me in the 10th grade in English. And I mean, I remember one time my mom came up to the school, and you know how you had these PTA meetings, and usually the teachers don't really go too far in. Well, my mom came to the PTA meeting to Miss Harris, and as soon as my mom walked in the door, Miss Harris like, "I'm so happy to see you, Miss Hill, because let me tell you about your bad son." You know, started going in talking about this, and I remember my mom telling Miss Harris in front of my classmates and my classmates' parents that if he continues to act up and be a clown in your class, you have my permission to whoop his, you know what, right? Right? This is like, man, we don't have capital punishment these days. What's going on, right? So she says this, and so that's the type of teacher that I had with Miss Harris. Well, Miss Harris said she taught journalism. So my 11th grade year, that's when you start picking electives. And in my 11th grade year, Miss Harris going in after, the 10th grade year, she said, "Hey, what elective are you picking for the 11th grade?" She said, "Why don't you pick journalism?" And I'm like, "Why would you want me to be in your journalism class, right?" And I didn't find out that the next year, Miss Harris wasn't teaching journalism next year. There was a teacher that she hated that was teaching
Ah,
journalism
tried to
next year,
stick you on them.
named Miss Bedford. And she wanted me to be in Miss Bedford class. She hated Miss Bedford that much that she wanted the class clown, the guy that she couldn't stand the most, to be in this journalism class to give Miss Bedford hell through the journalism class. So I chose journalism, went in, but I fell in love with it. And like I said, I was playing sports at the time, but at the time I knew I was going to be great in it, and just kind of got a knack for writing, and I love being creative and everything. And by my senior year, I was the sports editor, and then I became the newspaper editor on my senior year, and became the journalism student of the year in high school, and it just became a natural stick, man. I just fell in love with it, and I said I didn't want to do news. I always kind of wanted to stay in sports because I don't want to deliver bad news to people. So throughout my Air Force career, going to school, got an internship, and just kind of stuck with it, man, and it just worked out for me. Thank God.
So talk to us about breaking into the field. So sports director, Hagerstown, Maryland, 1995, and then walk
Yeah.
us through jumping market to market before you ultimately get to ESPN.
Yeah, it's a grind, man. The day that I got out of the military is the day I got my first job in broadcasting. Like, it was crazy because I tell people all the time, it's like all you need in life, because in this business, in any business, you're going to hear a lot of no's, right? And so when I was in the military, I sent out 75 resume tapes right before I was about to get out. And I got three callbacks, 72 rejections, three callbacks. One of the callbacks was telling me how bad my tape was, right? So I got two callbacks. Another callback was from this station that was like, oh, giving me like, and another one was giving me a critique of my, say, we loved it because it was funny, it was this and all that type of stuff like that, but I didn't get the job. And it was one in Hagerstown, Maryland. And I remember a month before I was about to get out of the military, Hagerstown, Maryland gave me an audition. And this was a day I went to the audition. It was the biggest snowstorm that Maryland had seen in years, right? And luckily I had a 4x4 and I made it there. And I remember the news director, Bob Warngesser, telling me, he's like, "I didn't think you was going to make it." I said, "There was nothing in the world that's going to stop me from being here." That was that discipline from the Air Force and just making it there, whatever, throughout the summer. Even though the freeways were pretty much closed or whatever, I made it there. I took off 4 hours ahead of time, even though it's usually an hour drive. I got there, and the day I got out of the military, 2 hours after I got discharged, I got a phone call from him asking me if I wanted the job in Hagerstown, Maryland. So I get the job in Hagerstown. I spend 6 months there, move up to sports director in the 6 months that I'm there. I go to Fresno for 2 years after that, enjoy my time in Fresno. Then I was in Nashville for 3 years, had a great time in Nashville. Then, I was kind of on the rise. That's when I started seeing people talking about me in national sports magazines, and people always told me when I was in Nashville, like, you're going to be on ESPN one day. You're going to be one of these guys, whatever. You don't really pay too much attention, but it kind of goes to your head a little bit. And then finally, I get a call to go back to New York, work for Fox Sports New York, and then 9/11 happens. And then this is when the ups and downs of a career start to happen. 9/11 happens. That show loses money, runs out of money. This is the first time that I'm out of a job because I had gone from high school into the military, out of a job. Now I'm looking for work. So I'm out of work for 6 months, go to Dallas for a year and a half, a year. I get there with this guy. We don't get along. Not the type of sportscast he wants. He fires me. First time I'd ever been fired. So I go from having a show that's canceled to a show that's fired with this guy in Dallas. And luckily, 7 months later, the station across the street picked me up for some freelance work. But it was a very depressing, very hard time in my life at that time. I was thinking about quitting and giving up. But the glory of God kept me around. And then I remember I could tell you a story that's it's in my book, but I don't, it's a long story. But it was an incident that happened where I was about to destroy my career and I was about to hurt somebody. But luckily, hearing the voice of God taught me to turn things around. And after that incident happened, 3 weeks later, that's when ESPN gave me a call and asked me to come up there for an audition. Went up there and auditioned. Obviously, that led to me being there for 9 years, and I've been at Fox Sports the last 12, going on 13 years now, man. So it's been a long, arduous journey at times, but it's been a wonderful experience, and I don't regret any second of it, to be quite honest with you.
You literally stole what I was going to say. I was literally going to say, what a long, arduous journey. Talk
Yeah.
about the ESPN audition process. How was that like?
Nerve-wracking. Once again, you gotta also understand this is a time when I'm out of work. I'm working freelance, so like I get an audition for ESPN where people always told me I was going to go, but I never like, okay, I'm local markets, I'm cool. I don't really need ESPN that much. I never really wanted to go to ESPN, but when they brought me in, I'm like, okay, well, I need the job now. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. And going in, man, it is nerve wracking. You go up there and you hear about Bristol, you see everything. They set you up with a producer, and they give you like this rundown, and you have to write all your scripts. You got to do all that, and they give you shot sheets, and then you kind of you don't get a rehearsal. You kind of just got you can go over the highlights and see the highlights beforehand, whatever. But you don't get a rehearsal for it. You get on set. You get on the set. They put the earpiece in, man, and they go. And it's about 4 or 5 minutes of a process. And if they like you, they'll ask you if you want to do it again. If they don't, they've seen enough. They won't. So they asked me if I want to do it again. I was like, yeah, I'll do it again if you guys want me to do it. So I did it again. And what's crazy is I did it, went back home, went back to Dallas, and I didn't hear anything for a while. And then I realized I didn't actually get the job through my audition from ESPN first time. They hired a guy named Dari Noka, who I'm still pretty cool with. I love Dari to death. He's still there, as a matter of fact, the SEC network. And so they said, but we like you, and we want you to audition for this role on the show called Cold Pizza at the time. And this was in New York and all that. And I said, okay, cool. So I was waiting. I was going to go up to New York. Meanwhile, this is when the phone started ringing again, and I got an audition in Houston. I went down to Houston for the audition and did a great job in Houston for the audition. I remember going into the airport after the audition, going back home to Dallas, and my agent called me and said, well, you got the job. I'm like, well, Houston? I'm like, I just left them. They could have told me before I left. They said, no, it's like ESPN is actually wanting you to come to Bristol. I'm like, for Cold Piece, I haven't auditioned there yet. She said, no, there was an opening. There was a guy who left to go ESPN radio full time. And now they got an opening and they liked you enough. They want to bring you in and just give you the job. And so that's how that actually happened. I don't think I've ever told that story before, to be quite honest with you. So that's a little bit
Awesome.
of an exclusive for you guys.
So for me, when I think of ESPN News, the Mount Rushmore, you, Michael Kim, Bill Pito are definitely on the Mount Rushmore. I want to hear your Mount Rushmore of
Oh,
ESPN News anchors.
the ESPN news anchors? Okay, well, I'll say ESPN news and I think I did ESPN news for the first 2 years I was there, and we started doing shows there. But um I if I can I exclude myself?
You can, sure. I mean,
Okay,
Sure.
you're definitely
I'll
on it because
You're definitely on it.
Mike. Well, me and Joe growing up, and we got ESPN News, and we were watching you for like 8 hours straight, every
Yep.
30-minute loops, a loop, a
Oh
loop. So,
man.
so that's why
Thanks,
for
man.
us, you're definitely on the Mount Rushmore. But you could exclude yourself, sure.
Thanks, man. All right, so I'll put myself on it. Thank you, man. Since
Better,
you guys
gotta
said
be
Nick
on
and
there.
Joe, I appreciate it, man. So me, I say, like you said, Michael Kim. I think you got to put either J.W. Stewart or Keith Russell back in the day,
Okay.
right? One of those guys, because I will put them together because they were such a pairing. Like nobody could ever mess with them when they were on it. And then I got one more. I would go with either no, Brian Kenny. Brian
Oh,
Kenny.
BK was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Brian
right.
Okay.
Kenny.
He did
Brian
ESPN
Kenny,
News.
the host of the
ESPN
Absolutely.
Ad-libs,
News.
man.
That's right.
Yeah, man. Brian Kenny was in before he went on to do all the boxing or whatever. Brian Kenny, man, was and David Lloyd was there
Boxing,
too on another
baseball.
show. Yeah,
This is like the golden age
yeah,
of
yep.
sports TV back then. That's a strong list, but like you said, you come basically everybody who came on at around that time. ESPN News, you grind it out a year or two, then you move on to bigger things. So you move on from there, you're doing obviously everything with the network under the umbrella, and then you're also doing radio too. So I'm wondering how did that radio opportunity come out to be? And talk to us about the different ways that you have to go about preparing for a TV show where it's 30 minutes to an hour. You're writing scripts and stuff versus I'm going in for a 3 hour radio show here. How am I going to prepare for this?
Yeah, well, it's totally. I'll answer the last question first. It's totally different because in radio, you're it's all your personality. It's who you are. You're opinionated. At the time, ESPN wasn't as opinionated as it is now. You see a lot of debate now, but you got to remember, like you said, the golden era of ESPN, where we did highlights and it was personality, whatever, and your catchphrases and all that type of stuff like that. So that was the golden era of ESPN. But on radio, that's when I really got a chance to truly be myself. Like even on ESPN News or ESPN TV, I was still kind of held back at times by some of the people there, some of the executives, and they allowed me to do certain things. Don't get me wrong, but on radio, man, I could really let loose and give my opinion. I was always an opinionated person, and of course the preparation is a lot different because you got to have a knowledge. Your voice alone, it can't be aided by any highlights or visual aids. It's just you and the listeners, keeping them kind of enthralled, keeping them engaged, keeping them enlightened, and keeping them excited about what you're talking about. And sometimes, if you need to, kind of piss them off, just so they can have some kind of feedback for you as well. So yeah, you got to have an opinion. You got to take a side on that. So it's different. How it all came about, man, I got to give credit to Mike Golick is the one that got me at ESPN Radio. I used to do, once again, every show in the building. One of the shows that I started doing a lot was NFL Live. And I was on NFL Live when Trey Wingo wasn't there. And Mike Golick obviously was one of the NFL analysts. He came on and we built up a good rapport. And I didn't think it was that close. I never got the guy's phone number or anything like that. But just being on the show, he liked how I did what I was on when I was on the show. And I remember one day I got a call from somebody at ESPN Radio. It's like, hey, Golick really likes you a lot, and he wants you to fill in for Greeny when he's not here next week. I'm like, so I've never done radio. I haven't done radio since I was in a local market in Nashville, in like years before, right? And then I'm at ESPN on national television, national radio, and I've never done ESPN radio before on any of the shows. And all of a sudden, I'm about to be on the flagship radio show on ESPN filling in. And I'm like, okay, cool, go on. And I guess I crushed it because I was on. And once again, that was truly who I was. And people got a chance to see me without the editorial process that ESPN puts you through or whatever. And they loved it, and they said, "Hey, man, we want to actually diversify a little bit here and stuff like that." So, a month later, they approached me and said, "We're thinking about doing a radio show with you and Mark Schlereth. Are you interested?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So that kind of led to me and Schlereth doing our radio show for the year and a half that I was there before. I left ESPN, but it was a great experience, man. And once again, I think because of ESPN Radio, a lot of people don't realize this. ESPN Radio is the reason why I got my job at Fox Sports. Because if it wasn't for ESPN Radio, the guys at Fox Sports really wouldn't have seen my personality. And at the time, FS1 was looking for personality-driven anchors and hosts. And because of that, this guy named Scott Ackerson, who was in charge of FS1 at the time, he used to listen to me on ESPN Radio, and he said, he was a fan of mine, and he wanted to kind of bring me in, which he did. And once again, 13 years later, here I am still.
Yeah, it's been a great journey so far. Appreciate that background there. For you, I know you're such a big personality-driven guy, so I want to know what you liked better when you're doing the highlights. Do you like having those shot lists in front of you, or do you like to just call it like you're seeing it, ad-lib it off the screen?
A little bit of both, man. Obviously you want to have the shot sheet in front of you just because you don't know what's going to
What's
happen,
coming
right?
next,
Like
right?
you got to know what's coming next. You got to kind of have an idea because you can see and what's crazy with shot sheets, you can see a name and you think this guy's going to do something great, and then the defender comes and blocks the shot and goes the other way. So like, oh, it's like Giannis Antetokounmpo, takes it in strong and like he's going in and he had it. Or you can set it up and say, oh, Giannis had a huge game. Of course, the Greek Freak's doing his thing, and then all of a sudden Giannis gets a shot blocked. So you need to know what's coming up before that, right? So the shot sheet's helpful, but I don't read everything that's on the shot sheet.
Yeah.
When I talk to young sportscasters, I'm like, hey, you'll get a shot sheet, but you still got to make it your own. So you got to chop it up. You got to circle things. You got to highlight certain things. You got to put your own notes. You got to put your own nuggets on there, or whatever. Still make the highlight your own and act like you're talking to your best friend, like if I'm talking to you or Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what we do with the rundown over here. So you prefer essentially bullet points as opposed to just reading stuff word for word, correct? You think that's
Absolutely. I
probably the
am.
better way
I
to
am
do it?
not. I hate scripted, man. I really do. I can't stand scripted stuff. Like even like the stuff I do at Fox Sports. Few of it is. I'd say about 15% of what I do at Fox Sports is scripted now because I'm doing the games. I'm reacting to the games, highlights, and halftime or whatever. So I think the only thing that's scripted is anything we have to, any kind of sponsor element that we have to have. So we obviously have to script that.
This is kind of a loaded question because you've mentioned a bunch of people already. Favorite people that you got to work with during your time at ESPN, which was a little under 10 years. And is there anybody at ESPN, like specifically, that you still really stay in contact with today, 10 plus years after the fact?
Yeah, that's an easy question. Jay Harris is one of my best friends in the world. Jay and I love working with Jay, man. Every time I work with Jay, we almost forgot that we were on television. I don't know how many times we almost cursed uh, because it just became so much fun. We'd be on the air, and all of a sudden we just kind of get away from the highlight and just have like a banter between the two of us, and we forget that we're on television. That's how good that was. And we actually did a skit show called Both Sides of the Ball that we used to do together as well. So we used to have like Snoop came in, I remember Bow Wow and some other big celebrities would come in and we do little skits with them like a some kind of like, just like sketches that we would do with the guys that would come in or whatever. But yeah, Jay by far, and I'm still cool with him today. As a matter of fact, we're going on a golf trip in April. We do every year together. So that's my guy. I miss a couple of guys still, from back in the day that I don't really keep in touch with a lot of them. But Kevin Connors was always cool. Loved him to death. David Lloyd was always cool. Several people there. I mean, I know I'm forgetting some certain people, but yeah, they were pretty cool, man. I enjoyed my time. Only a handful of, I wouldn't even say a handful, maybe one or two pricks that, I'll leave nameless because, I don't want to destroy
Pretty,
any.
it's a pretty good ratio there to all the people you worked with to only have two
Yeah,
sour
yeah.
apples.
Some of the guys that you work with, what you see on television is what you get behind the scenes. And they didn't treat me bad, but it was just
That's
like
all right.
sometimes
Listen,
when
you're not
you,
going to get along with everybody. There's nothing wrong with that. Some
yeah,
people
no,
just
you
don't
can, you
mesh.
can,
Yeah.
yeah. But I try and extend my positive energy no matter what they give. So and just hey, if you're having a bad day, that's on you. I'm not gonna let you affect me.
So one of your former colleagues wanted me to ask you this question. I'll ask it to you, and then you could see if you could guess who it was. But your
Uh,
former colleague said he wanted us to ask you if you can do an impression of Jonathan Coachman's voice exercise.
yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was Coach. That was Coach, man. He was. Am I close? Did he give it to you?
No, it was actually Adnan Virk who said to
Oh
ask
no,
you.
I knew it was Adnan. I knew it was Adnan. Yeah,
He
And
didn't give it
Adman's
to
our
us.
ESPN leak.
He just said let Mike do it. And I
yeah,
just
yeah. That was his whole thing right before a show, whatever the warm up.
big yawn.
Yeah, Adnan is I love Adnan, man. That guy's super talented, man. He's still at Major League Baseball Network, right? He's still at MLB.
He
Yeah,
is.
yeah. He's incredible, man. Super funny. Movie guy, baseball guy, super knowledgeable, whatever, man. He's just like I miss him too. He was pretty cool. Yeah, he and Coach didn't really see eye to eye when it came to a lot of things, man. It's funny.
Uh,
Yeah,
fair enough. All
yeah.
right. So you mentioned it. You get recruited for Fox Sports. You're there from the launch, essentially, right? Uh,
Mhm.
over the past 13 years, things have kind of have changed there with the programming, and your role is always kind of changing and evolving, and you're covering so many different sports as well. So I'm interested to hear about how you're just kind of staying on top of everything in the sports world, where maybe you're doing, you know, college basketball three days in a row, but then the fourth day you got to do NFL or whatever. Like
Yeah.
how do you keep yourself straight?
What's crazy is I think one of the reasons why I've been in this business for going on, man, it'll be wow. On 2 days from now will be 31 years that I've been in this business. February 28th is when I got my first job in
Wow.
broadcast. So, well, 3 days, I guess. And yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, one of the words that has, I guess, best described me, and one of the things I know that's kept me around is having a good attitude, good personality, trying to get along with everybody, but B, being versatile. I think the versatility is something that kind of keeps you around in any genre that you're in. If you can't do that, if that goes away or they don't like you over here anymore, you got three or four other things that you can fall back on. So I've always just been, like I said, a huge sports fan, and I'm willing to take on any topic or any sports that there is. I'm willing to learn about them. And yeah, I mean, I just just kind of stay on top of it, because I'm a sports fan, period. So, but if it's something I need to prepare for, I'm always going to be prepared for. So, like if I know that I'm doing college basketball on Saturday, man, look, I'm deep in my college basketball because I'm just a fan anyway. But if I know I got to do soccer next week and I'm not a big soccer fan, or if I got to do all of a sudden USA hockey comes up or whatever, I'm doing my research for it because, you just got to prepare for everything that comes along, man. So that's what's going to keep you around, man. That's why, if there's any show that's in the building, I'm willing to host it. When I was at ESPN, I hosted every show in the building except Outside the Lines. That was the only show I've never hosted at ESPN while I was there. So you just kind of you know what you have to do beforehand, and you just prepare. Now, sometimes you don't even know what you have to do beforehand. I've had to host a show one time because a anchor got sick or host got sick, and it was a UFC show. And I'm not a UFC fan. I'm not a huge UFC fan, but when you're a host and you have analysts with you, your job is a traffic cop. Your job is to hand it off, right? So know enough to be able to, they say fake it till you make it, hand it off to the experts to make you look like you know what you're talking about. And you can add your little 1 or 2 cents here every now and then to kind of put a nugget or a button on everything. But, it just kind of happens, man. But just be prepared for everything.
Interesting, very interesting. And while you've been at Fox, you also have done a bunch of other roles as well. But I want to hear a little bit about your time with the Clippers,
Hmm.
juggling the
Yeah.
schedules and doing pregame, postgame, being at the arena and whatnot, and really being with the grind of a basketball team for 82 games.
That was really interesting. That was a great experience, man. I'm not really a road guy. I hate being on the road a lot, but when you get to travel on charter flights and get treated like one of the players and get to stay in the best and finest hotels in any city at the Four Seasons and get those type of experiences, you ain't gonna turn it down, man. So I do miss those 3 years of being a pre and post game host for the Clippers. It was fun, man. The players, the organization was pretty cool. They were on the Bomber at that time, just like he was the new owner of the team or whatever. The organization was a lot better. The players, they were just getting rid. They had Blake and Chris when I first got there, and then they started getting rid of the players or whatever. So that was a difficult time of seeing them kind of struggle a little bit, just barely making it to the playoffs, man. But the coaches, the staff, everybody treated me well, man. And once again, that's one of the things I miss about actually being on the road, man, just being able to stay in those hotels. But it did spoil me. It made me realize, okay, I got to work really hard now because now when you go on the road, man, and I ain't putting down anything. I'm a hotel snob. It's gotta be a nice hotel, man, for me to stay in it, bro. So I look ahead of time, and maybe if I can't afford the Four Seasons, it's gonna be something a little bit notch under it. But I'm trying to get that Four Seasons money all over again because of that time with the Clippers.
Let's talk about some other opportunities. Hosting Hyperdrive on
Yeah,
Netflix all the way back in 2019. Now, for anybody who's not really familiar with that, it was essentially a reality show based in auto racing. But again, the names behind it, right? Apparently Charlize Theron produced it. I didn't realize that, right? And there were some names associated with the sports world who were a part of it, including yourself. So, who approached you with that opportunity? Because it's very different, I think, right, than some of the things that you were used to. And again, as you just mentioned, it's like, you got to be prepared to take anything, that comes with you, even if you don't know anything about it in advance. You can fake it till you make it, or you could do, a little prep beforehand. So, who approached you with that opportunity?
well, it's funny because I was talking about like always being prepared for opportunities, right? Or your relationships. And this is really important for anybody that's trying to get into this business. A lot of times you're going to hear a lot of no's, right? But sometimes those no's will become a blessing because they'll turn into the right yes a little bit later on. So the production team that was behind Hyperdrive, they also produced a show called BattleBots. And I don't know if anybody remembers BattleBots. BattleBots was on there for a number of seasons, and they brought me in when I first got the ESP to Fox to audition to host BattleBots, and I didn't get that, but I impressed them enough that they remembered me for things and future things. Like even with the ESPN situation, I didn't get the ESPN job when I first got, but I impressed them enough that hey, even though I didn't get it, I still followed up with a nice hey, thank you for the opportunity. It was cool being a really nice guy and all that stuff like that. And I did the same thing with the production company. So when this opportunity came up, they was looking for a host for Hyperdrive. They called me in, and I was up for it. I didn't even have to audition. But I remember like I was one of the final three, and there's a whole process. So the production company can want you, but if they got another production company that they're working with, the other production company's got to approve you, and then you got to get approval from the network or the streaming service, right? So that was a very treacherous, nerve-wracking process of thinking you about to get this job in this big show on Netflix, but you got to pass through the network executives at Netflix. So I remember came down to they said, hey, well, we're all a go. Netflix just wants you to come in and do this read. So I came in and I was the scariest audition of my life because I'm like, this is Netflix, man. I know I've been at Fox, being ESPN. This is Netflix. And I remember went in and did the read, and I guess I crushed the read because I remember 2 days later, my agent called with somebody else on the phone, and I was like, okay. And it's like, you got the job. And so I had to fly out like 2 days later and go to Rochester, New York to shoot that for 2 weeks on the Kodak lot, old Kodak lot. And it was a great experience, man. Like you said, it was like a reality show slash sports experience, that kind of went into the background of some of these drivers, regular drivers that use their own cars for drifting purposes and going all over all these obstacles where it's like I always tell the producer of the show, I'm like, man, you must have been high as hell when you came up with the ideas for some of these obstacles, man. And it was great fun, great experience, man. I wish we would have gotten more seasons, but that show cost so much to produce that I guess they just felt like it wasn't enough to produce, but it was good. It's still on Netflix now. So if you're a Netflix guy, look up Hyperdrive, check it out. 10 episodes, hosted by yours truly. Looked a little bit younger back in the day, but man.
Now you still look good, but you've slipped
Yeah.
twice already. You mentioned an agent, right? Had a lot of sportscasters through the years, and Nick and I, our backgrounds are in sports media, so we worked at a couple of different places. We always ask about talent management, talent representation. We always ask this question. Now, for you personally, you're charismatic, you're well spoken. In the event that you wanted to speak on behalf of yourself, you could probably do that, but there are other elements involved, such as the business, scheduling, right? Everybody's cut and all that. Was it different? So do you think being an agent or having an agent is necessary, or what do you think?
I think there's pros and cons to it. I've had, and it's crazy. I don't like this fact, but I've been through the whole alphabet soup of agents. Like I've been with UTA, I was at CAA, I was at WME, I was at IMG.
Everywhere.
I've hired and fired a lot of agents over the years, man, because I want agents to work just as hard as I do, and so I have a love-hate relationship with them at times because I really feel like, you know what are you doing for me that I can't do for myself? You're taking 10% of my money, but did you actually get me the job? And once you got me the job, how involved are you in the process of helping me to take the next step to go somewhere else, to do more stuff and not just sit back and just wait for them to say, hey, we don't need your services anymore, and then try and look for another job. I always feel like an agent should be working for you and believe in you as much as you believe in yourself and not just sit back and wait for a check. I've seen so many times where a person is super talented, and obviously when you're super talented and all these people want you, especially if you're on a platform like ESPN or whatever, and then all of a sudden all these networks are clamoring for your attention or whatever, an agent comes in and says, hey, yeah, I can get you a job. Well, no, you can't. He's getting the job himself, or she's getting the job herself. You're just facilitating the negotiation. Now, of course, the negotiation process, because you don't want to be that person that takes it personally when they tell you that you're not worth this or whatever. You want that in between. You want that kind of buffer or whatever. And if you got a good agent that can negotiate money, then I say it's absolutely worth it. But if you're a great talent and you got great relationships in the business, I think you can move up by yourself because I believe people will just call you directly these days and give you opportunities. Now, once again, you can hire a negotiating agent or an attorney, I should say, to negotiate your contract and not be stuck with a 10% fee for 3 or 4 years of that contract or whatever, and just pay like a $10,000 fine, not fine, but a $10,000 fee
Yeah.
and be done with it. But it's a difficult question to answer, man. I know I'm not answering it directly or whatever, man. But once again, there are pros and cons to everything. You just gotta realize who you are, what your situation is, and how much is that agent actually going to do to help benefit you in your situation?
I think that's well said. Good answer. Again, we get a lot of mixed answers, right? So again, we've asked the question through the years. A lot of former ESPN people have answered the question very candidly. So let's move on here. Mentioned before you do some reality TV, right? So when
Mm.
it came to the being appearing on reality TV, it's a far cry from somebody like Nick and I who grew up watching sports, watching you on all these shows on ESPN, watching you on Fox Sports One, do your thing. You presented yourself in such a way for the sports person, right? But then when you're on reality TV, it's an entirely different audience, right? So how did working in TV before that, and production before that, ultimately make you look better for other appearances that you did?
Well, you're aware of the camera. You're aware of how to react and act in front of the camera. You also realize that there's an image part of you. And even though when I was on reality television, I was still myself, there was a part of me that I was never going to give them because obviously you don't want to show everybody everything, right? Because sometimes people take it the wrong way and it gets edited the wrong way. So it's a very slippery slope doing something like that because you never know how if they're gonna try and make you the good guy, bad guy, and take things out of context. And you know how editing works sometimes. So,
Yeah.
and there's not a lot of television, and the editing process is a huge part of that. But being on television beforehand actually prepared me for a lot of things. There have been times where I would get myself in this, or somebody would put me in a situation, and I wouldn't, just because it wasn't my show, I would like, okay, well, this is over. You know what I mean? And take the microphone off because I'm like, you're not going to put me in that type of thing. So it was something that I did. It was something that, I was being supportive at the time, but do I wish I did it? Hindsight being 2020, absolutely not, because I think it really had an effect on a lot of things that I'm doing now. Because I think when you muddy the waters of the two,
Yeah.
of being a respected journalist or being the credibility that you get from a career at ESPN and Fox and other places, Netflix and all that type of stuff like that, and then you muddy the waters with a show like that. You know, I shouldn't be saying that, but I am. A show like that, I think, people can look at you a little bit differently, and I think it has somewhat. And I can't prove it, but I think it has somewhat affected my career in a sense. But once again, I think once at the end of the day, what's for me is for me, and regardless of what I did, I think I did it for a reason, and I believe that burdens become blessings. So I think in the end, even though it was a burden right now, and I feel like it affected me, I think in the end it's going to enhance me and it's going to give me something even better. Moving on from that.
Yeah. Everything seems to always work out for you, and every step of the way you seem to be acquiring new skills, new skill sets. Now, I'm wondering these days, how's your like interior design game and house remodeling working, with your girlfriend Paige, because that's her business. So you must have picked up a thing or two over the past year,
Man,
right?
she is amazing, man. I love me some Paige Turner. She is just an incredible person, man. We just celebrated a year of being together, recently. That's one of the reasons I came to Toronto. And, the enhancement that she's given my life has been remarkable. I think she's, outside of my kids, and I think it's the best thing that's ever happened in my life at this particular time and helped me a lot. But yes, one of the benefits of having her in your life is there should be a reveal show just based on the way my house looked last year and the way my house looks right now. It's it's super incredible, man. I feel like when I go home, I feel like I'm going home. I feel like I'm going somewhere that is comfortable. Like I had a house that was a shell, and it was a nice house, don't get me wrong, but it was a house, and like I want to go and be out all the time. Now I just want to stay at home and not even go anywhere. I don't want to go party. I don't want to go out to eat with my friends, whatever. I just want to stay at home because she's made it such a home and a nice, comfortable space. So that's one of the benefits of having her in your life, man. So it's a great reveal, and she does it. She enjoys doing it, and also some of the benefits her too, because you got to get rid of the ghosts of girlfriends past as well. So
Joe knows all about that.
she did a whole exorcism. She's like, this got to go, this got to go, this got to go. Okay, yeah, somebody slept there. That's got to go. And yeah, I think everything left the house except my marble countertop, man. So I think
Full
she wants to put it
full
on too.
revamp. Love it
Tony,
enlisted. There you
I
go.
got a whole joke about that. My one of my stand up portions of my stand up is a whole about her moving in and the changes that I had to make with her moving in, man. So it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. Love to hear that. And just about done here, but real quick, I know you're a big basketball guy. So are we. Will the Knicks win a championship before the 2020s end?
Oh my gosh, man. I was thinking about this. I said this last night, Nick. I said, bro, the Knicks may never win a championship in my lifetime. I was like, they won in my lifetime, but I was too young to remember. I can't remember. It was 1973. I was
Yeah.
3 years old. I'm like, they may never like I want to believe in this team so much, and I believe that man, playoffs are gonna turn it on. Just like last year when they were losing to Cleveland, they was losing to Boston, it's getting blown out. They're gonna do the same thing to Detroit and the playoffs this year. They're gonna do the same thing to Cleveland this year. They're gonna get past the Eastern Conference and by some miracle, they're gonna beat Denver or Oklahoma City or San Antonio in the finals, and it's gonna be the year because Cat's gonna come on. But the problem with the Knicks, man, is just I don't see any dogs on that team. I don't see anybody with that grit, that grind. It's like, you know what? I want it more than you. And they don't have that Kobe or Michael Jordan or Allen Iverson killer mentality, man. And that right there is scary. So hopefully they'll get it together. You know, obviously they've gone through stretches this year where they look like, okay, well, this could be the year. They're gonna make a run or whatever. But it's just still something that's missing, man, especially when they play Detroit's of the world. That game, to lose the first two games against Detroit is one thing. But when they lost that game against Detroit coming out of the All-Star break
Blown
and
out.
And it was a
Jalen Duren,
blowout, and it was very one-sided. Then you worry a little bit.
yeah, and it was at home. I'm like, and people were hyping it up. It was like a playoff game. It's like,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
when we look back on this era of Knicks basketball, we're going to be asking the question, what if that Halliburton shot did not go in?
ooh,
That's good. We're going to be asking the question because that now we'll see. We're recording this February 2025. I would say our episodes are pretty evergreen, but Mike Brown is hired. If they're not in the finals this year, that he should be fired because that's what you're telling us as fans. Nothing against Mike Brown. You're telling us as fans we moved on from Thibodeau because Mike Brown's going to get us to the finals. If he doesn't get you there and you're in the same spot you were last year, the East Conference Finals, or you don't even make it, which is what it maybe looked like this year, then it looks like you kind of went the wrong direction. I'm thinking if they don't make the finals this year, Mike, they're probably going to have to shake it up. No more
well, it's a failure. I
conference.
mean, if they don't make the finals this year, then obviously what's going to happen is they're going to make a move in the offseason. They're
Yeah,
going to get Giannis. Giannis is out. Giannis not going
gotta
to
get
sign
him.
a deal in Milwaukee. So they didn't want to wait at the trade deadline and give up too much. But when Giannis becomes available, then that's another story. And they can move on from Cat or whatever who they need to move on from. But I'm gonna tell you the truth, man. I think if it's we talk so much about Cat and Jalen. Obviously, they got to get along, and and Cat's got to give you more on the offensive end. He got to get more than 5 shots that he had the other night against Cleveland. But the two keys to me in that starting lineup are Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. If those two, especially Mikal, they got to give you something. I understand they give you something on the defensive end most of the time or whatever, but you got to give me, I mean, 17 to 25 points a night, man. Shoot the ball well, come up with some clutch makes and clutch times, whatever. If they can do that, if they can find their rhythm, find their groove, maybe they could do something funny. This team could go to the NBA Finals so they can not get knocked out in the first round by a team like the
I don't know.
Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
Who knows, man? Who knows?
Yeah, if I had a guess, I would say they're not going to win a championship in the next
No.
4 years.
Well, just our history, and we've been disappointed too much. I don't. I try not to raise my expectations too much because I got a biological father that never showed up for me on Saturdays when he was supposed to pick me up when it was his weekend. Sitting out on the stoop waiting for my daddy to come, and my mom was like, "He's gonna come." No, he ain't coming. He didn't come. So I stopped having my expectations raised when it came to that type of thing. It's a joke, but at the same time, man, it's like no. I'll believe it when I see it. And if it's a pleasant surprise, and then now of course I'll live with it and I'll be happy with it.
Yeah, but as far as like your sports fan, it could be worse. You could be like Joe. You could be a Knicks and Jets fan.
That's
Oh my gosh, Joe, is that your life?
that's my life.
Oh my man, somebody sent a priest to Joe, man. Oh my gosh,
Need an
man.
exorcism.
Oh my, yeah, you definitely need an exorcism, man. Oh, I mean, it's one thing that the Knicks and the Giants fan these days, but damn, at least the Giants are one in the last century or two, bro. Like, come on, bro.
So, Joe, what
Yeah,
do you think
they
happens first? Jets win a championship, Knicks win a championship, or unfortunately you pass away?
It's tough. That's very tough. I think the Knicks are close.
Okay.
I
They
do.
are close.
They're
But
close. They're very close. That's just
I think where we get murky is the cat fit in the playoffs. Because
yeah,
Cat hits certain shots in the regular season that are not available in the playoffs.
right.
He's been very good defensively, and when it comes to rebounding, he's been a little better than even I thought he was going to be. But that
Mhm.
fit there is not quite perfect.
Right.
How do you adjust for that?
And that's a
That's
Mike
my
Brown.
assessment. Right.
He's got to coach. He's got to coach. I understand deep lineups, and I'm glad they moved from Thibodeau because he was wearing his players down. To be honest with you, so
Right.
Thibodeau did as much as he could for that team. But you can't run teams, 8 players in the regular season, and then expect them to do what they did in the postseason. They get worn down. So by the time they make the finals, they're too tired to make a push, and then
right.
they get injured or whatever. So you got to play a deeper bench, a deeper rotation, then cut down your rotation in the playoffs. And Tibbs just he could never believe in that type of system. So that's why he had to go.
Now, just because you had a personal relationship with him, you covered him. How do you feel about the way things ended for Chris Paul? I can't believe nobody wanted to pick him up this season after your Clipper. His Clippers did him dirty the early of the season because he's trying to be what he is, a leader in the locker room.
Yeah, I thought that was terrible, man. Like I said, the Clippers organization, they looked terrible doing that to him. I mean, at that particular time, sending him home, he deserved a little bit more respect. And if the indications are what we had reported, that he was just trying to help a player out or whatever as a leader, that's the biggest asset you get in a Chris Paul these days. It's not his shot making ability or his assists or his defense or anything like that. It's the leadership of helping these younger players on the court and being that another coach that's on the sidelines and helping them in the huddle. And if that was a problem for you, then you shouldn't have brought him in the first place. But to have him be cast out the way he was cast out, when this man should actually have a statue of himself outside of the Intuit Dome one day, I thought it was a travesty, and it was a bad look for an organization that has had a lot of bad looks over the years.
Yeah, the statue should be Chris throwing alley-oop to Blake Griffin. I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely. It's got to be.
put the
They got to
Clippers
go and they
back
got
on
to
the
do it
map.
together. Yeah, they
Absolutely.
got to do it together, man. It was a fun time then.
Oh yeah. Well, Mike,
Yeah.
this has been a lot of fun. Last question here. In your life or in your career, what has been your you know I'm right moment? So what I mean by that, a time or place where you wanted to pursue something, you asked somebody for advice. That person said, Mike, sounds like a bad idea. Don't do it. It's not going to work out for you. You then said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And in the end, you will see why it is that I'm right about this. And I can tell you, I told you so.
Mm. My broadcasting career. You got to understand when I was coming up, man, I grew up in a place called Bessemer, Alabama, where you didn't see people like me coming from that neighborhood doing what I was doing. And I remember telling my best friend at the time, who since passed away, I remember telling Daryl Bices I'm gonna be on television. He said, "You can't do that. You're not." First of all, he said, "You're not white. You can't talk white." Blah. He said all that. He said, "Blah blah." Seriously, he said, "You." And I was like, watch, I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to do it. I'm going to pursue it. I remember telling other people, and it was like, you got to understand, I came from New York, moved to Alabama, so I had a New York and an Alabama accent. Nobody could understand a word I was saying, bro. I had to teach myself how to speak. Literally, when I was 18 years old, my first couple of years in the military, teach myself how to speak subject verb agreements or whatnot because it wasn't really taught that well when I was in school. I told you I had an English teacher that didn't like me and I didn't pay a lot of attention when I was there, even though I was in journalism or whatever. But I could write, but I couldn't speak. And so I told him I wanted to do it. That I said I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And although the odds were against me, man, God was for me. And if God is for you, then who can be against you? So 31 years later, like I said, here I am.
Yeah, and shout out to that wicked 10th grade English teacher. Mike got the last laugh.
Miss Sanders, yeah. Thank you, Miss Sanders. Yeah. You intended harm for me, but you started a career. You didn't realize it, man. But I appreciate her.
Well, Mike, good luck with everything that you have going on in your life moving forward. Seems like you've got amazing people behind you now, including the one that you're with in Toronto. Safe travels
Yeah.
back to Los Angeles. So
Thank
what we
you.
do here is we always give our guests the last words, but because we were now we're about an hour in, and all this stuff has really been good. But there's some things we even haven't talked about. Your company, your book, Open Mic, which is available on Amazon, right? So let's take this time here at the end to just wrap this up neatly with a bow. Just talk about the things that we haven't really talked about, and obviously where can we find you across all social media? And it's not just the sports stuff. It's the comedy stuff. It's everything else that
Yeah.
comes with you. So we want our viewers and listeners to be able to follow you and see everything that you got going on.
Well, to find out what's going on in my life, man, just follow me on social media. It's Mike Hill, ITS Mike Hill on Twitter and on X, I should say, and on Instagram. I don't do too much TikTok. But I got a lot of things happening, man. I got I'm an executive producer for a documentary that's coming out on Amazon later this year. The Terrell Owens documentary that we've been working on since last year. It was supposed to come out last season, but we got delayed by a couple of months. So it's coming out football season this year. And also got a lot of things happening with my production company, Thrill of Entertainment, some concepts, some shows that I'm working on or whatever that's coming out pretty soon that you'll be hearing about. And working with my girlfriend, we got a company together called On-Site Production as well. We're working on some concepts, some ideas, and once again, these skits and sketches, man. So just continue to follow me, and I appreciate you, Joseph, and Nick for having me on, man, to do this podcast, to get my name out there a little bit more. Because even though you've been in the business for a long time, you never turn down an opportunity, man, to kind of promote yourself. So I appreciate you guys.
Mike, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Sugar Mike Hill, and my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.